Welcome to the production studio at Biola. Let me start this session by telling you a story. Not long ago, I was speaking to a group of maybe 200 or 300 college students, and when I was done, the student came up to me and he was just deeply troubled by the reality of hell. We must have talked for 40 or 45 minutes, and I did my best to answer a lot of the standard objections that he raised. But it seemed like every answer I gave just had no effect on his world view. And then eventually it kind of hit me. I think his problem was he thought hell was total overkill because he viewed human beings as being essentially good and had maybe just done a few little bad things here and there, but were basically good. I got to admit, I kind of agree with him if human beings are essentially good. But every time I get a chance to speak on hell, I always start by asking the question, how could a good God send a good person to hell? And the reality is, God doesn't send a good person to hell because there is no such thing as a good person. I think Scripture and history and experience makes this clear. In fact, Jesus said in Mark 7:21 through 23, "For from within, out of the heart of man, come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, foolishness. All these things come from within, and they defile a person." You see, Jesus knew what was in the heart of man. In Romans 3:10 and the following verses, Paul says this, "No one is righteous, no, not one. No one understands, no one seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they have become worthless. No one does good, not even one. Their throat is an open grave. They use their tongues to deceive. The venom of asps is under their lips. Their mouth is full of curses and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood, and their paths are ruin and misery. And the way of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes." My dad often helped this idea to sink home with me. And growing up, maybe on TV or in a conversation, somebody would describe an act that somebody did as inhumane. My dad would stop me and he'd say, "Son, that act, that evil act is not inhumane because inhumane means not human." He'd say it's humans who did that. You see, we are pretty good, myself included, in justifying our moral behavior when we compare ourselves to others. So think about it. A person tells a lie and thinks, well, I don't tell a lot of lies. That was out of character. The person who maybe tells a lot of lies says, well, at least I don't physically hurt somebody. And the person who physically hurts somebody says, well, at least I didn't kill somebody. The person who kills someone says, well, maybe I didn't kill a lot of people. And the person who kills a lot of people probably says, well, at least I'm not Hitler. And I don't have a clue what Hitler would say. But the point is, if we compare ourselves to other people, we can always look good. But if we compare ourselves to Jesus, I think we're going to look very, very different. You see, God doesn't send a good person to hell because there is no such thing as a good person. Actually, there was one good person, and they condemned him to death. Now, if we're going to talk about the morality of hell, we ought to have an understanding of what hell actually is. I think a lot of people have a misconception that in hell, God is just torturing people. And it's as if flesh is just falling off as not God, probably the demons or Satan are just torturing people for eternity. I'm not sure this actually describes what hell is like. So imagine you're rolling through the news in the morning and you see a headline that says, "The Lakers annihilate the Celtics." I doubt any of you would stop and go, oh my goodness. This is a national tragedy. The Celtics basketball team is dead and the Lakers killed them. Now, you might think it's a tragedy of a very different sort if you're a Celtics fan, but the word annihilate, although it can mean to kill, in the context of sports, it just means they beat them very badly with a much higher score. Well, I think when we look scripturally at some of the descriptions that are used to describe hell, I think a similar phenomenon is going on. I mean, think about it. Hell is described as fire, but it's also described as darkness. If there's fire, it's not dark. If it's dark, there's not fire. I think these are metaphors to help us understand the horror of hell, but also as a way of describing the indescribable. You see, fire communicates decomposition, that something is breaking down, and darkness communicates loss and brokenness. You see, heaven is where somebody is fully human. God has made us to be in a relationship with Him, to love God and love other people. That's what we do in heaven. In hell, all of that is lost. It's the worst thing that can happen to a human being. Pastor Timothy Keller, I think, captured this idea well. He said, modern people inevitably think hell works like this. God gives us time, but if we haven't made the right choices, by the end of our lives, He casts our souls into hell for all eternity. As the poor souls fall through space, they cry out for mercy, but God says, too late, you had your chance, now you will suffer. This caricature misunderstands the very nature of evil. The biblical picture is that sin separates us from the presence of God, which is the source of all joy and indeed of all love, wisdom, or good things of any sort. Since we were originally created for God's immediate presence, only before His face will we thrive, flourish, and achieve our highest potential. To lose His presence totally, that would be hell. The loss of our capability for giving or receiving love or joy. Now, if hell is so terrible, then why believe it? Well, for me, I gotta be honest with you. I don't like the idea of hell. It bothers me that friends and loved ones could end up there. Now, there's a few reasons we could talk about why hell makes sense, but when it's all said and done, for me, the reason I believe in hell is because Jesus warned us about hell. Jesus believed that hell was real. In Mark 9:43, Jesus said, if your hand causes your downfall, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life maimed than to have two hands and to go to hell. You see, Jesus had authority. He not only fulfilled prophecies, He not only did miracles and rose from the grave, but He was sinless. He saw with moral clarity more than anybody who's ever lived. So again, if hell is so awful, why would anybody choose it? I think the reality is that people make daily choices that lead them on the road towards hell. Daily, we are making decisions to love God, to love other people, or to live with the autonomy of ourselves. And hell is the result of somebody who says, no to God, I'm living for myself. C.S. Lewis wrote this: there are only two kinds of people in the end. Those who say to God, thy will be done, and those to whom God says, in the end, thy will be done. All that are in hell choose it. Hell is eternal because we have sinned against an infinite God. You see, the penalty we incur for something we do depends upon the nature of the act and the nature of the being we sin against. Well, God is all-knowing, He's all good, He's infinite, He's perfectly loving. So when we sin against God, we incur an infinite penalty. But this is why the gospel is so beautiful, why Jesus, the God-man, paid the price for us that we couldn't pay. Jesus was human, so He represented us, but He's divine, so He paid an infinite price. That's why Jesus died, to save us from hell, but also so we could be in a loving relationship with Him and other believers for eternity. Looking forward to being with you for our next and final session.